You may want to take some extra steps to secure your residential mailbox after what police say has been a string of mail thefts, mostly on the island and on the south side of town.
Police say the thieves have targeted 6 blocks since May, and they now have a photo of the pickup they think is involved. Our Taylor Alanis joins us from the 1200 block of Sandpiper Drive near Oso Bay. Taylor.
Joe McKenzie. Now, I spoke to some neighbors who didn't want to go on camera, but they say it was kind of like a domino effect, that one neighbor noticed that their mail was missing or had been stolen, and then they actually checked their surveillance footage, and this is what they saw. They saw a man get out of a white 2-door extended pickup truck. He then opened their mailbox and began going through what was inside. Other neighbors started noticing some of their mail missing as well and called police. The first incident happened on May 29th at the 13,500 block of Ducat Court. That's on the island. Other streets struck days later were the 1300 block of Mizzen Street, and that was actually hit twice. And then there on the here on the 1200 block of Sandpiper Drive, the last two are the 4900 block of Bonner Drive and the 13,900 block of Flint Route Drive on July 3rd. We are told that white pickup does not have a front license plate, but does display a handicap placard. The U.S. Postal Inspection Service did have these tips for residents. Use a locking mailbox. Pick up your mail soon after it is delivered. And if you're expecting any kind of checks, credit cards, or other important items, ask a trusted friend or neighbor to pick up your mail. And that same rule applies when you're on vacation. Thieves tend to target houses that kind of have their mail stacked up or their mailboxes full because they know someone hasn't been home for a long time. Police ask if you have been missing any kind of mail or believe it has been stolen to call them or the postal inspector on the number on your screen. For now, live on the 1200 block of Sandpiper, Taylor Alanis, 3 News.
Okay, Taylor, thank you. Now